What's up guys, it's Mike here from the Wall Street Image, and today I wanted to take time to tell you what I still consider to be my favorite camera, even in 2019. And as you probably already guessed, it's the Panasonic Gh5. I'll tell you why. What's up guys, I appreciate you all tuning in, and I just wanted to take time to discuss why I still feel like the Panasonic Gh5 is still one of the best, if not the best, run and gun video cameras even in 2019. Now, as you probably already know if you keep up with camera equipment and camera gear, that 2018 was full of new releases by some of the top brands. Sony came out with the a7 III at the beginning of the year, and that was later followed by Canon's new release of the EOS R, and then I think Fuji released the camera, Nikon released the camera. It was just full of new camera releases. And if you're like me, you're one of those people that when you see new cameras, you just want to say, take my money. But after doing some careful consideration, I really asked myself, do I really need to switch my camera gear? For the last year and a half or so, the Panasonic Gh5 has been my run and gun camera. I've used it for client interviews, I've used it for business purposes, even vlogging. This camera actually has been my day-to-day driver. And so when you see all these new cameras coming out, you don't want to feel like you're missing out on something or you're behind the curve when it comes to your gear. And after I really just did some comparisons, I just came down to the fact that nothing really has been released that would merit or warrant me to switch from this camera. I mean, this camera packs a real punch. So there's a couple features that stood out and made me not want to switch, even though that there were so many other competitors. Number one was the fact that this camera shoots 4K. And not only does it shoot in 4K, but it shoots in 4K 60. Having 4K 60 in your video not only gives you the option of having some high quality video footage, but also gives you that option if you want to slow it down to give that cinematic look for your video project. That's especially great for weddings or doing B-roll footage of any type of project. And that brings me to number two, which is the ability to not only shoot in 4K in slow motion, but to also use 120 frames per second in full HD. And rarely do I ever push my camera up to 180 because I really love the fact that I can shoot 120 frames per second. Shooting at 120 frames per second, man, it just gives you that slow motion matrix effect where your video just stands out. There's also other slow motion options, but having 120 and 180 frames per second in a small camera like this is unheard of. Number three is probably my favorite feature of this camera altogether. That is the IBIS, the in-body image stabilization. And what that basically means is that this camera's built-in ability to stabilize your footage. You know, when you're walking and you're taking a video and after you play it back and it's all wobbly, with this camera you don't have to worry about that. This camera's stabilization is so good that when you play it back and you're watching it on your screen, it really looks like you have some type of stabilizer or gimbal. I have a couple stabilizers. I have a Glidecam. I also have a DJI Ronin S. But with this camera, oftentimes I don't even need it. Having the image stabilization with this camera, you can get smooth handheld shots. To my knowledge, there is no other camera whose image stabilization even comes close to this. And when you pair that with the fact that this camera shoots in slow motion, it gives you the most beautiful, smooth footage that you have ever seen in a camera this small. The next feature about this camera that I love, and I know a lot of people think that it's controversial and think that all cameras don't need it, but I personally love the fact that this camera has dual card slots. That means that I can use two SD cards in this camera. And it not only gives you the ability to set up two SD card slots for memory purposes, but you can even customize how that memory function works on this camera. So say for instance, if you're one of those people who loves to shoot video and photography, you can set it up where card slot 1 or card slot 2 saves video or photography. In addition to that, you can set this camera up where card slot 1, after it fills up, it won't cut off your camera, it won't stop recording, it'll automatically start sending the remaining footage to your second card slot. And that is amazing because the last thing you want to do is to run out of memory and have to stop your camera, reload a new memory card, and start back recording. And the last feature, which is perhaps the most controversial of them all, is the fact that this camera has a flip out LCD screen. I don't have to worry about whether or not I was in focus or not, because I can see myself on the screen. The last thing you want to do is to be vlogging and you get the footage on your computer and realize that your face is blurry and your camera was focusing on the background the entire time. So these are just some of the features that I love about this camera that caused me to say, you know what? Nothing that's out right now really even merits me wanting to switch at this point. That's not to say that later on this year that there's going to be some releases that may catch my interest, but at this time I really love this camera. And there are some bonuses about this camera. One of those would be the price. This camera is perhaps the most affordable camera with all of these features. And I know that the A7 III came out and it has dual card slots, and you also have the ability to shoot in slow motion, but that camera at the time of this video still costs $2,000. The Gh5 at the time of this video, you can get it around $1,500 US. And the next bonus of this camera is the form factor and size. This is not a huge camera. I know that it's not as small as some of the other mirrorless cameras that are out there, and it's bigger than the typical micro four thirds camera system, but it is a fairly light camera. Your arms are not going to get worn out by carrying this camera around all day. And depending on what lens you have attached to it, you can just throw this thing in a camera bag and not worry about it taking up all of your space. Now, I will say that this camera is not absolutely perfect, which by this time you probably already know. One of the huge downsides of owning this camera is the autofocus. Now, Panasonic has recently released some updates to help this autofocus, but as you probably already know, that none of those updates have really perfected the autofocus in this particular camera. But if you're like me, when you're doing client videos and you're doing run and gun stuff, you'll more than likely be using manual focus. So all in all, this is still a great camera setup, even in 2019. If you're in the market looking for a high quality video camera and it's not gonna cost you a kidney and an arm and a leg to afford it, the Panasonic Gh5 is the camera that I would recommend to you. Does that mean I'll never switch from the Panasonic Gh5? No. All it simply means is that at this particular point, I still really love this camera. And I'm not one of those people who only sticks to one specific brand, but what I do love is when something comes in handy. If it works for me, in order for me to switch, somebody's gonna have to really come out with something that really piques my interest and has some really monster features. Whoever has the best camera that fits my specific needs, that's the camera I'm gonna buy. It's not about the brand that you select, it's about what best fits your needs. So guys, if this video has been at all helpful, I encourage you, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel if you have not subscribed already, and hit the notification bell so that you can be notified when we post new videos. I want you guys to stay in touch with us. Leave a comment and tell me what you think about the Panasonic Gh5 in 2019. Is it for you? Is it not for you? If there's something out there that you still think is better, just let me know in the comments and I will reply to those comments. And as always guys, I appreciate you all joining in, and we will talk to you in the next video.